And so basically what I want to speak about today is a journey to heartbeat engagement. I am the former VP of operations now at ECA. I left in May as part of a plan, so I'm fine. ECA is a maker of power and data solutions for the furniture industry. They have about 2 buildings, about 55,000 square feet, and about $36 million in sales, sort of give you an idea. So essentially what ECA is, it's a complex level of different processes. We have a full machine shop, our fab shop, primarily sheet metal, welding, lasers, laser cutting, turret presses. We have a full paint line, cable assembly, and product assembly. And we make, go back to the first slide, these are some of the products that we make. And it's basically bringing power and data and USB to the desktop. So creating that sort of comfortable environment, office environment in corporate and in educational settings. You can see that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So here's some of the products that we make, power and data to the desktop, primarily office and educational environments, among others. So ECA was able to sustain or have a sustained, and for 9 years, 18% year-over-year sales growth, and it was done by building a sustainable lean organization. So my goal is to use this sort of 9-year period in ECA's history to show growth of a journey of growth and development, and using these tools listed here to build an engaged culture. But first, I want to go over a couple of paradigms and concepts to frame the challenge we all face in business. 3 concepts. The first one is, I'll call it the Cupcake concept, which is complexity and instability increases in all systems over time. So if you think about it in terms of the cupcake, back when I was growing up, the cupcake up here in the top left was what we thought of as a cupcake. The one to the right of that was, you know, the one for birthdays. It was a little bit more complex, required a couple of additional ingredients. And today, down the bottom here, this is what a cupcake looks like. Who knew it could get so complicated? But what it means that at the time when engagement is most needed, we tend to struggle to achieve it consistently, because the more complex it becomes, the harder it is to replicate over and over again. The second concept is that in the past, from a manufacturing perspective, we tend to have only to focus on economics. What we could make for how much. Now we have to focus on a whole host of different areas, from environmental to social to community, etc. Obviously, moving from a single dynamic to multiple dynamics creates difficulty of success, it exponentially increases difficulty of success. Third concept is that every business consists of people, process, and product. You may have, of course, heard that from, I think it was Marcus Lemonis, made it popular on the TV show The Prophet. The one thing to know about this, though, is that over time, over the long term, people dominate process and product. As an example, if you think about Apple, it was a computer company, and then it became a phone company, a music company, a media company, and a watch company, and an apps company. Apple was not handed watch technology. In fact, it entered a very crowded market space that was focused on cost reduction. It reinvented each market that it entered, and it did this because it had engaged in visionary leadership. So if we can get our people to be capable and engaged, then everything else works much better. Of course, however, what we've learned is that the vast majority of employees in any company who show up every day are not actively engaged. In fact, if you think about it, what we know is that 14% of them are what we would consider actively disengaged or disgruntled. And we should consider wrapping a big old bow around them, knocking on the door of our nearest competitor and running away.
Right.
So the challenge, if we're to be truly successful, is to figure out how to get the majority of our people actively engaged in this increasingly complex environment. So from an ECA perspective, that sets the stage for what we're up against. So back in 2011, we were ready to grow. You know, we had a good management team with 3 owners, Dave, Russ, and and Glen, so Dave, Russ, and Glen down here, who were actively involved and capable and competent. They were all willing to work hard. We were the desire to succeed and committed. But in reality, we were like most organizations, nothing special. The one thing we did have that separated us in those early days is that both Glen Golden, one of the owners, and I had significant experience implementing lean principles in multiple environments. So we immediately set about rapidly deploying a number of lean tools. I'm not going to get into all the different lean tools due to the time constraints, but as you can see from the pictures, we did a lot of visual management, value stream mapping, Kaizens, Kanbans, etc. Just one of our Kaizen teams. So we were able to go about deploying a lot of these tools, and what happened was we started to see success. All this effort yielded a statistically significant change in our path to success. Our numbers started to turn positive. We saw a surge in employee involvement. They were excited to be involved, and they could see the changes we were making made a difference in their daily work lives. So that was easy. We stopped seeing ourselves as a small company. We started seeing ourselves as a company who just happened to be small at this time. It's a different but important mind shift for a small company. However, as our numbers started to improve, demand started to rise, expectations started to grow, and so did our pain. On paper, we were succeeding wildly. In reality, we were overwhelmed and in danger of collapsing like a house of cards. Success was turning into success. What we realized was that as customer demand rose, it was the kind of problem that every organization hopes to have, and yet we were miserable. We found that we had different agendas and different ideas of what success is and how to get there. We really couldn't seem to get on the same page. There was a lot of activity going on. One of the best things about ECA's management team at the time is that we didn't deny reality. Despite the positive numbers, the positive financials, we understood that we had a problem, and we also understood the importance of dealing with that problem and the importance of reflection. You may be familiar with what's called the PCDA cycle, but we used a slight variation of that. It was plan, do, check, reflect, and then act. The reflection step helped us to see that while we were ready to succeed, we really weren't ready for success. So when we step back and look at that, it was why? Because we lacked a solid foundation to build on. Although applying the tools would make us a lean practitioner, it didn't necessarily guarantee that we would be a world-class lean organization. We found that we were all working extremely hard, but not in a coordinated manner. So everyone on the management team had a different belief as to why we were succeeding. We were all describing what I call the elephant from our own up-close perspective. We needed clarity on who ECA was trying to be. Think about it this way: if we weren't clear, then how could our employees be? So the revelation to this was, I'm going to use this picture as a talking point, was that, you know, when we had this lack of clarity and alignment, you know, when you see this picture, what do you think of? Glenn, what do you think of?
That he couldn't get out of the truck to take the stick out of the way and just said, it'll do.
Yeah, what an ass, right? This person's clearly disengaged, government work, he doesn't care. Well, what if I told you that employee did exactly what we asked for and not what we wanted? What if we told her, we give her 4 instructions. Number 1, time is money, keep the truck moving. Number 2, don't damage the truck. Number 3, under no circumstances do you get out of the truck. And number 4, hit your numbers.
Right.
Does that sound familiar? Maybe that's the direction we give our employees. Okay?
Yeah.
This person could be a model employee because they did exactly what we asked for, but not what we needed. So this comes from a lack of clarity as the identity of the company. Why are we here and what are we trying to do? When you try to dictate every action from the top, you tend to create opportunities for miscommunication, which result in a lose-lose situations and then finger pointing and disengagement. At least the driver didn't do that. So at this point, we took a hard look at our values and our vision. Here's what they were at the time. We found that they really didn't reflect our identity as a company. And if you look at them, we really had no hope of becoming a world-class leader in supplying electrical data solutions, and nor did we really care to be, okay? And our one big quote up there is from one of the Buffetts. It's Jimmy Buffett, not Warren Buffett, so we kind of missed the mark. We needed to start over. So what we did was we looked and said, what identifies a company? And there's 4 parts to it: mission, vision, values, and purpose, and that gives you your identity. A mission is, so as a management group, we set about defining who we are. A mission statement describes what business we're in and who our customer is. It captures that relationship with our customers. So you can see from our mission statement there in red that there's really 3 parts to it. We provide power and data solutions. We're committed to delivering the ultimate customer experience, and we're focused on our individual customer needs. Hopefully when you read it, you quickly get a clearer picture of what ECA is all about. From a vision perspective, our vision statement tells our stakeholders what we care about. We don't make anything life-saving or for national defense, so we really struggled initially trying to come up with clarity as to what our vision is. Eventually, we recognized that what we cared most about was the people we worked with. So as you can see, we want to bring passionate people together to work hard, have fun, and inspire each other. We wanted to surround ourselves with good people. Next is our values. Our values explain to all those how we plan to conduct ourselves each and every day. Each value was carefully chosen and has a deep meaning to the company and its employees. I used to love walking out, and I think I pointed this out to you, Glenn, and Gavin, that I used to love walking out on the floor and hear people, the laughter. I also love hearing employees learning and developing new skills, whether in the company or outside the company. All these tie together, and the last segment of our identity or our DNA is our purpose as an organization. Most companies have the mission, the vision, and the values, but they lack a clear stated purpose. Why does the company exist? We eventually decided that our purpose was to inspire and be inspired. We wanted our employees to be an inspiration to their community, to their families, and to their co-workers. We also wanted ECA to be an inspiration to our community and to other manufacturing companies. So these 4 elements provide ECA's own unique identity. Think about this relative to your own company. If everybody believed in the vision, executed the mission, lived the values, and worked towards a common purpose, how great would your organization be? The challenge for us now was that we had to go and try and live the MVVP every day and make it part of who we are, not just become wallpaper. So what we did was we started out in a 3-month rollout. We had large meetings, small meetings, quizzes, competitions, anything to do to bring it to life. We incorporated them into our monthly 411 meetings, our training, our new hire orientation, our review process, quarterly gain sharing, our daily decision-making processes. We were relentless and persistent, and slowly it dawned on our people that we were serious about this. Oh, we actually meant this, is what they said to us. So what did this do for ECA? Well, we started to see that our organization coming into alignment. Our people at all levels now understood who we wanted to be when we grew up. Processes were rewritten with the customer in mind. Hiring practices started to change. We stopped rowing against each other and started rowing for each other. People didn't need to ask what to do. They could figure it out from our identity. Gradually, trust, reliability, predictability started to grow, and instead of pulling in different directions, we started to row together. Decisions were made quicker and at lower levels of the organization, and empowerment started to grow. People felt more confident in their ability to make things happen, and they now understood what we valued. We started to share a common language. So then we had some more success, and of course, then failure. We started to see demand growing, but now we started to struggle for a different reason. Now we didn't have enough talent to sustain the growth. Our hiring practices were hit or miss. Often we would hire and onboard, and then 3 weeks later, people would just stop showing up to work. Or worse still, we'd figure out that the person we had hired was actually a bad fit culturally. So we went back to our PCDA cycle, and what we found was they were trying to hire the wrong kind of people. By that I mean we were placing an emphasis on the wrong things. In the past, when we needed somebody to run a press brake, we reached out to the agencies and looked for people with press brake experience. We realize now that it would be much easier to hire or promote from within people with already with the right values, and then invest in their training rather than to hope to change somebody's values after they were hired. Of course, that's easier said than done. So we committed ourselves that whenever possible, we would commit to promote from within and look to replace the entry-level position that they left. ECA's employee value set was already known, and it's an important opportunity now for advancement for them. We also found out, our biggest fear was how long was it going to take to train somebody. We found out in most instances that the training moved a lot quicker than expected, as the employee was super motivated to succeed. We also provided a 1 month free trial period, sort of no harm, no foul, to reduce their fear of failure. But we still had a problem, of course, of finding and hiring new people to replace them with the right values. So we used the process called SABA, or SABA principles, as the guide to reimagine our hiring process. SABA is a very powerful axiom. Simply put, we're all governed by processes and practices in our daily lives. Our attitudes and behaviors as people are greatly influenced by the quality of these processes and practices. Instead of focusing on dealing with behaviors and attitudes, we focus on building the right structures and activities which would yield better processes or better behaviors and attitudes in the long run. SABA exists even if you don't know about it. Imagine if every day that you went to work, and on your way to work, you had really bad traffic. You never knew where it was going to hit. When you get to work in the morning, you're 10 minutes late, or you have to leave a half an hour early, and just to get there on time, how frustrated you would be. So you're not, you didn't start out wanting to be frustrated, but your behavior and attitude is one of frustration because of the structure of how the road system is structured and the activities of the drivers on the roads would create that mindset. So by installing the right structures that precipitate the specific activities occur, these foster certain behaviors which over time modify or motivate the formation of the desired attitude, and that's what we're looking for. So we reimagined our whole onboarding and redid our whole onboarding process for our hourly employees. So here's the overview of it. We now see onboarding like website dating. Think Match, not Tinder, Match, okay? We worked through a couple of agencies who understood our dating profile. The agencies are our first filter. They weed out those who don't meet our core requirements. We advertised that experience wasn't necessary, focusing instead on communicating our mission, values, and purpose, and the work atmosphere we had at ECA. Team supervisors would then interview the candidates for fit within their teams, and if they approved, then we would bring them on board. We had a no relatives policy. This was to ensure that everyone felt like they would be treated on their merits and they're not on their relationships. So as we went about this, there's Taylor. It becomes a 3-month dating process once we bring somebody on board. During this period, we work hard to actively introduce the candidate to the company through a host of training, started with the mission, vision, values, purpose training, which was conducted by yours truly. Some of the other training is also listed up there and was conducted by other members of the team. People can fake an interview. 3 months of work environment is much harder. So after 3 months, hopefully we're not looking like that as a relationship. Mm-hmm. Every month, the production manager and the supervisors met, all of them together for lunch, and review each candidate's progress in several key established areas. This monthly feedback is documented and provided to all employees in every area except attendance. We have found that attendance rarely gets better as time passes. If you can't show up for a job early in your career, it's unlikely it'll get better as time passes. The supervisor and the team leads also work to test through this period and ensure that we know who their new employees truly are. We want them to know how they act under pressure so their teammates will know that they can rely on them when the going gets tough. It's easy when the sun is shining. How do you react when the rain is falling? After 3 months, they are hired as an ECA employee if they score high enough. So by documenting the progress from month to month, there's an activity, which is an activity in SABA. It ensures that we don't miss a month, that we are consistent in our review process, that we're providing a level playing field for every employee, that we're ensuring that the team supervisors and leaders are not passive in their engagement with their employees, and that proper feedback is provided to each employee so adjustments can be made. So since we started this process, our attrition rate has improved dramatically, and our employees are now our foundation. We spend less time dealing with performance issues. Again, we now got on an upswing of success, and we had struggled again. We had a good flow of people again. We had advancement, a process in place. Our next problem is that we noticed that our team leaders' abilities, styles, and methods were all over the place. So we had ineffective heartbeat leaders. What we realized, of course, is that people don't leave the company, they leave their leader. It's that relationship between the leader and the led that is so important. If the leader doesn't engage with consistency in an engaging manner, the employee becomes disengaged. So the solution is to provide great heartbeat leaders. We call them heartbeat leaders because they're the ones who hold the heartbeat of the company in their hands each day. Their people make the products that our customers want. So what we did then was we went Gemba, which means we went out on the floor and observed what was actually happening at the point of leadership. What we found was that our process for developing leaders had yielded the exact result it was designed to give. What I mean by that is that we had provided little training to our leads and just placed good people in the positions with little preparation and hopes that they learned on the job. The results of this was that we had good people who were never trained and therefore set up to fail. We also had good people who really weren't capable of leading. They were good operators, but not capable of being leads. And almost every lead was overwhelmed with wasteful activity that had been piled on them over the years by other areas. They, in reality, were just trying to survive each day. The good news was that it was our fault and we could fix it. So we recognized that if our people had the perfect leader, then they have a hope each day of having a perfect day. So we went about fixing the problem. We clarified, the first thing we did is we clarified the roles of the team leader and supervisor. We found that a lot of times they were overlapping. We separated out responsibility for disciplinary action and made it just the responsibility of the supervisor. The team leader was there to focus on empowering and engaging their team rather than commanding and controlling them. This was a huge mind shift for our employees and for our team leads. We set the leader-led ratio to 7-to-1. This would allow leaders the ability to spend time developing their team. We brought in an outside resource, a company called TMG, to train our leads to be heartbeat leaders and then assess their progress over time. Those who couldn't be heartbeat leaders were quickly reassigned to roles that better fit their talents. Most of the time, they were actually quite relieved because they realized quickly that this wasn't something that they were up to, and they were just in the position because the company asked them. We then trained and promoted those internal candidates who we felt had the right mindset. So what does the perfect leader look like to us? Well, here are some of the key attributes. The surprising thing for me was that the best leaders tended to be introverts, not extroverts. We tend to have this view or a vision of a leader as the one charging over the hill saying, follow me. But we wanted leaders that put process ahead of results, because they knew that with every improvement that they achieved, the process would get better and the results would get better, and they would be sustainable. That's actually our fab area lead, Patty. She's about 5'4", and she does a wonderful job. As a result of this, the results were actually quite remarkable. Suddenly we had consistency in how each team was led. There was clarity of purpose, and the workforce was much happier. More learning and more improvement activity started to occur organically. I didn't have to go out and ask. They would call me out and say, hey, Paul, when you're out next time, stop by. We want to show you what we did. And the business, of course, started to grow again. Of course, then, next cycle of failure. We recognized, you see a pattern here. We're not great forward thinkers here. Just want to let you know. We're out of natural leaders. For the dog people, I hope you went shopping because the cupboard is empty. And we didn't have an internal pool of leaders. So we decided to go and hire outside. You'd think we would have learned our lesson from what we did so far. The solution was hire experience. And we went out and hired, I think it was about 2 team leaders and 5 supervisors over a period of about a year. And we focused on, you know, we wanted people with core values, but lean experience. But what we found out was it was really an epic fail for us. It was really a huge learning experience. Why? Because we chose the easy wrong rather than the hard right as a leadership team. We failed to realize that we were repeating the same problem we had when hiring hourly employees. And I never said we were super smart. Not all leadership experience is good experience. We found that most manufacturing leadership is command and control leadership, not empowerment and engagement. So the leaders we brought in who were successful elsewhere were bad fits for our teams and values. They had to unlearn the skills that had made them successful and trust us to adopt new skills and new approaches. This was almost impossible for them to do. So after a quick PCDA cycle, we recognized that we had to start our own heartbeat leadership development program. We based it on the West Point experience that we'd gotten from TMG in the initial training. We recognize now there was no quick fixes and that we were better to have patience to grow the right leaders internally, and that we were better off having no leader than the wrong leader during this time. So the West Point experience of premises is build leaders before you need leaders. So how do we go about doing that? Well, we created an interactive program led by our production manager, and he would run this leadership training 2 or 3 times a year, whether we needed leaders or not. And anybody could apply. You had to apply as long as you were not on probation. It was a very immersive and engaging activity. The training takes place over about 4 to 5 weeks. It consists of 4 classroom sessions and a host of activities. And it's based on the book, Creating a Lean Culture by David Mann. It focused on a number of areas listed on the slide here, and an improvement project which ran throughout the training, and that was formally presented on the last day. So we did everything from a job shadow. You shadowed a team lead for the whole day, and then you did a reverse job shadow where you moved into their role for the day, and they provided feedback to you as you try to perform what they did each day. Went over the ECA production system and spent a considerable amount of time, effort, and energy on what exactly it means to be a heartbeat leader. So in this picture over here, you see one of our team leads now, Soma, presenting her improvement project. So the outcome of all this was that at the end of the training, one of 3 things happened. For us, we identified good leadership candidates early. So at the end, we knew, boy, we got 3 really good ones that could start right now. Some others need some work, and there's 2 or 3 that should not lead at all. And we'd give them that feedback. The one thing that would happen is that the employee would learn what it takes to be a leader. They may decide it's not for them. Hey, I enjoyed the class, but that's not for me. And we may, as I said, decide that it's not for them either, that what they consider or thought a leader was isn't exactly what we are looking for. So with honesty, we found that it was generally all outcomes were good outcomes. If the person decided they didn't want to be a leader after the training, then they had a better understanding of what their leaders had to do each day, and they became better first followers. If we thought that they weren't ready, we could provide input, and we did, on what they should go and work on to be better prepared. They could also retake the classes as many times as they wanted within reason. In some instances, employees use the training as a springboard into different roles, such as a water spider or supply chain role. What we also found was almost every employee who went through the leadership training became more engaged and more loyal to the company. But today, we've had remarkable success with this training. Our consistency from team to team has been very good. So if one player or a team member moves from one team to another, they can expect the same level of leadership, high quality leadership on each team. We also found good employees with hidden talents for other key roles. So if you look at this org chart of our operations team, every box that's in green is somebody who completed the Heartbeat Leadership Program and rose up through the organization. We also developed a very strong bench of candidates who could move into a position at a moment's notice. If somebody moved on, moved up, or moved over, there was a position available, we had a person ready to go. So these are the characteristics of our heartbeat leaders. Hopefully you can see that they match up well against our values: inspiration, eager to learn every day, persistent and insistent, being accepting responsibility and being accountable, creating a brain change, process focused, and so on. So if we look at what else we did here, we really tried hard to rotate our leaders through different areas. Just because a leader was good, we didn't leave them where they were good. For example, here's Taylor's career path at ECA over a 3-year period. Taylor started in our lowest assembly level, which is Assembly 1. She got promoted to Assembly 2. She then became a team lead in our, on our COC team, one of our COC's teams. She then became a lead in our paint line, which is a continuous conveyor line. She then moved back into COC as the supervisor. She got promoted as a supervisor, and then she became a continuous improvement facilitator. So that was all within a 3-year period. By moving up and down the value stream, this brought the customer supplier experience with them, and therefore there was no pointing fingers. The paint team supplies the COC team, so she moved from COC to her supplier and then back to lead the COC team. This encourages leaders to rely on the process of leadership and not on their local tribal knowledge. So of course we had more success, and then the company was sold. So in 2016, the company was sold to a friendly competitor. We now had to deal with the senior leadership transition. 6 of the 8 senior managers, you can see both me and Chris stayed on, and the rest of these yahoos over here decided to go do something else. Some of it involved gambling and some of it involved drinking. It was time, it was going to be a challenge for the organization to see who could stay sustained beyond, if we could keep the organization engaged beyond the sale. What we found was, as long as the MVVP, mission, vision, values, and purpose, didn't change, and there was leadership in place that believed in it, we could continue to stay the course. So we continued to grow even after the change in hands, because the new company, DECO, allowed us to maintain our same mission, vision, values, and purpose. They knew they had a good thing and they didn't want to mess it up. So our final challenge was what to do when there's no obvious burning bridge. Up until now, everything was a burning bridge that forced us to react. So how to sustain a high level engagement when there's no longer a new burning bridge, or the organization, and while the organization is not growing at the same rate and it's not new to our employees. Our solution was to deploy a new structure and activity called the 5th metric scorecard. So what is that? So if you heard about SQDC as metrics, safety, quality, delivery, cost, these are the primary metrics used, or categories of metrics used in lean manufacturing. The 5th metric is engagement, measuring how engaged your team is. So if we could align the organization and improve leaders' behaviors, then we'll increase the team engagement and improve business performance. But we have to be able to measure it and see that it's happening on a daily basis. So how do we go about doing that? Well, as we've established, engagement is about the relationship between the leader and the led. And each leader to their led is an individual relationship. So it's one to many. So this process is a 3-step process. Step 1, the leader sits down with the led and they set expectations. This helps establish the basis of the relationship. What you can expect from me, what I can expect from you. This happens when a new employee joins a team, or when an employee moves from one area to another, even a most experienced employee, or a new leader moves over. At that point, we consider the relationship to be disengaged, not the employee, but the relationship. This is not a bad thing. It just means that the leader and the led haven't developed an effective working relationship at this time. Step 2, the leader sits with each team member and they work on an employee engagement improvement plan for that employee relationship. And then step 3 is, on a monthly basis, a 15-minute report out where the leader meets with his or her leader and goes over the progress of the leader-led relationships on their team. So there's active conversations. This process has to start really slow. You don't just rush out there and start doing it every place. Expectation conversations first, and then one engagement improvement activity plan for each leader to begin with. And it's important to get the process working properly rather than working to check a completion box. This is a deep and meaningful process that requires much practice and shouldn't be rushed. So here's an example of a monthly report out for one team leader. They've all follow the same format for consistency. Consists of 3 sections. On the left is the metric snapshot. Here's for the month of May. It's Raquel's team. It shows how many players she started with on her team, or teammates. She gained 1. She now has 8. 5 are actively engaged, 3 are disengaged, and none are actively disengaged. She had 4 unscheduled absenteeism, and 1 person's out on disability. And Karen joined the team, and she's done her expectations and one completion on that date. Over here, you can see how Raquel looks at her team in terms of engagement and disengaged based upon a series of categories we give them to help them decide if their behaviors are engaged, disengaged, or actively disengaged behaviors that they're exhibiting. They can move from one category to another. It's okay. Obviously, we don't want people in the actively disengaged, but we need to work towards getting people into disengaged and then actively disengaged or actively engaged relationships. The third sheet right here shows one of the engagement plans for one of the team members. This is a plan that is worked together with the team leader and the lead to identify a habit that the employee and leader have both identified and agreed could be improved or worked upon or fine-tuned. The employee could be a highly engaged employee. We're not just working on troubled employees here, and still have an EIP. It's not a rehabilitation tool, but a tool that brings the leader and the lead together to improve their working relationship and to head off any potential issues before they become problems. This habit that they're working on here, so Sandra doesn't speak up and doesn't accept things, accepts things as they are, and we want her not to accept things as they are, to be more outspoken. This could take months for her to develop the new habit, so that's perfectly okay. We just want them to meet each month, talk about where they are, what the next actions are, where are they in their plans, so it stays in the front of everybody's mind. The last sheet on the right here shows a rating system that tallies up each month all the engagement scores throughout the factory for each team and allows us to see trends over time. The most important aspect is the engagement on a monthly basis. Team leads do not have to have an EIP for all teams at all time or employees at a time. It's quality over quantity. So what we found from this process is that if you think about it, your team leads will will tend to shy away from dealing with issues until they become big issues. And that's because they don't tend to have a tool set to deal with issues proactively. This process gives them those tools. It helps them to see trends before they become lasting issues with negative impacts. A method to address these issues is not punitive, and it invites a regular interaction in a positive manner. Employees start to actually look forward to these sessions because they see their team leader taking an interest in them, and they see them both working together to improve their employee and that relationship between the two of them. So if you want to look at some of our selected bottom line results from a financial basis, over the last 9 years, we've seen the 18%. We've seen on-time delivery above a 98% and a very high customer satisfaction rating. We've also seen a reduction year over year of 15% in defects, and inventory turns have gone up and lead time has come down. So from a community perspective, we've seen a 60% energy reduction per unit produced. We've added a quarterly gain sharing program for our employees. We try and do one implemented improvement or one charity event and one community event or employee event each month. We did 8 charity events in 2019 and 9 employee engagement events. We did over 1,400 employee implemented improvements. They're not ideas, they're not suggestions. They're where they identified an opportunity to eliminate a waste or to improve a process or product that they then undertook with their team or as an individual to improve the process. So with 160 employees, that's close to about 8 to 9 per person for the year. We had an over 85% participation among our employees on those improvements, so it wasn't just the small 20 dragging the rest along. And 60% of our workforce has changed roles over their work lives at ECA. So lots of opportunity to move forward. Finally, in summary, success is transient. What I mean by that is just because you get there doesn't mean you're going to stay there. Engagement is only as good as the leadership it follows. We want to hire for values, train for skill, and look to train leaders before you need leaders, so you have them ready, because leadership, heartbeat leadership, is so important in terms of engagement and success. You're much better off without a leader than with a bad one. Invest in your people and persistent patience builds good habits. But in the end, it's still all about leadership. And that's it. Any questions?
Wow. There's a lot in that, Paul. I really appreciate the detail and
A lot.
and I love the way you built the narrative. There's so many good stories in there, and the results, the last few slides are very compelling in terms of what you count as success. So I'd rather just hand it over to anyone on the call, because it's more about, in the limited time we have left, hearing what they have to say. So I know Gavin's been chafing at the bit there. Gavin, do you want to just take the invite?
I love the whole, it's so similar to the whole thing we went through with our company, same kind of things. And you and the way looking back, I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like you get this thing figured out, and then you hit this plateau, and it's like, oh, we don't, we're just like trying to find people, trying to, bring people in from outside, and it just totally doesn't work. And then we figured out, okay, we got to promote from within, and we do that, and then we run out of leaders. We did the same things. It was really interesting. I'm curious, when you decided to do a new thing, I think you said a little bit of something about this, but it was more important to like get it right than to try to like roll the whole thing out completely or something. But did you like initially sort of like run a thing with like one or two groups or something, just to see how and work it out and then roll it out to everybody else? Or
yeah, good question. The way we looked at things always is that if you're going to roll out something big that was complicated, complex, you prototype before you franchise.
Yeah.
So if it was something we were trying to figure out, we would prototype it in an area, learn our lessons, but we would really prototype it hard, meaning get out there, really put it through, get it through revision 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 as quickly as possible. And then when we were ready, we felt we were ready, then we would go franchise. But even there, our focus was on start slowly. If you think about it from the 5th metric perspective, our leaders needed to learn the tool just as much as deploying the tool. So our focus initially wasn't on results, it was upon getting our leaders to understand the value and the deep meaning behind the tool. We literally went out and said, okay, here's how you have this conversation. Don't sit across the table. Before COVID, of course, sit beside the person. Make sure you both agree, hey, here's something I noticed. Did you notice this too? Why do you think we have, why do you think this goes on, this habit of yours? What do you think we can do about it? So there's a lot of these open-ended questions. How to have open-ended questions so you're not leading the person to the answer you want. All this stuff had to be practiced, prototype to some extent, and get them beyond the initial phase, because once you start to teach the tool, we didn't want to go out and say, okay, I got 7 people, let me go set an EIP for everybody as quickly as possible so they're all rolling, because you're never going to have the time to deploy it with meaning. We wanted them to pick somebody easy, pick an obvious habit that they would both agree upon, that they that needed to work, and then help them so they could have a positive outcome. So I always equate it to the gymnastics. You want to do a tumble roll first before you take on a triple backward somersault.
Right.
Okay. So as you build this success up, then they start to see the deeper meaning behind the tool, and they're like, oh, I see it's more of this, not that. And the more they use it, then the levels of depth start to grow and grow and grow until they see it as something that it's indispensable and just part of what they do with every employee. It literally took us about a good 18 months before I felt our people are really starting to get it. But every month we met, every month we had the conversation. How you doing? How's your employees? What do you think? What's the reception? Until the rhythm, the meeting rhythm started to become natural. They knew they were going to have this conversation. They were prepared for it, and it helped really help them have another tool. So they weren't shying away from having that awkward conversation anymore. They have a tool to deal with.
I have a question.
Sure.
How long did it take you to roll out the entire process? It seems like you really had to go in stages from the very beginning of mission, vision, values, etc. And who was involved in that initial mission, vision part of your process?
Excellent question. Yes, we did. It took 9 years. I mean, literally everything that's there is that's, you know.
I can see that.
If you want to grow an oak tree, you got to plant the seed first, and you got to be prepared to be patient and help it along. But at each level, now there's probably things we could do if I was still there. That would be the next thing of growth in terms of engagement. But Bruce, in terms of who was involved in that first, it was the senior management team. So we sat down, the ownership of the company and the senior managers on the team. There was 8 of us, and we had some very heated, honest discussions about what the soul of the company was all about. We still joke because myself and the Kim, who was the head of sales and marketing, we used to get into it about, what our mission was for especially our vision. Our vision was the hard one. It literally took us about 1.5 years to come up with the right vision. Okay, so mission we got pretty quickly. Values we had a vision. We didn't like it. It didn't fit, and it really took us a long time before we and we'd go back, and then we'd take 3 months off and see if it got any better, and we'd go back and hit it again until we said, that's it. But once we got it, and as we went through the iterations, we would still go back out and say to our employees, okay, we fine-tuned it. This is more meaningful. And they were, patient with us. But they also understood the importance of the exercise, because as we were doing this, our identity as a company became really clear. And those who felt they didn't fit it suddenly started to leave. This was not what they wanted. They wanted a certain type, and we weren't expecting that. We're expecting, some people would be, dragged out of there kicking and screaming. But we also found it attracted the right type of people going forward, because once you started telling them this is who we are, they're like, cool, that's where I want to work. You didn't have to tell them what the job was. It was just, that's where I want to work. How do I work there? What do I got to do? And then we said, well, we'll train you. Don't worry about what your skills are. What we care about is your values.
Is there any, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The question is, I know that you worked with an outside agency or firm or consultant. How much facilitation and how much were they a part of it over that 9-year process?
The company's TMG. They're out of a training modernization group. It's actually a guy who was a former tank commander in the first Gulf War. He went through West Point. Brilliant, crazy guy, but brilliant. I really like him. His value set's great. So I met him about 7 years ago. Both Glen and I had gone to a 3-day course that he ran on heartbeat leadership. Loved what we heard. Came back and tried to implement as much as we could. At our level, and everything was a learning experience. And then when we finally recognized that, gee, we got to do it at the team leader level, that was when we got them back in, and we asked them to put together a 2 or 3 day course for our team leaders that we had at the time. We wanted to often when they say a prophet in his own village is without honor. hearing it from somebody else on the outside is much more valuable than hearing me tell you that this is how you act as a lean leader. So for them to hear it, it was important. They became certified out of it, so it had added importance. We made sure the TMG came back 2 or 3 more times throughout the year to sort of follow up. To us, the 2 or 3 day training was just to get started. It was the follow-up that was the most important. And we also called them back for some other related in training, and we helped develop the 5th metric training with them, which was the last training that we did with them about 2 years ago. So each training is not a here's some training and off you go. It had to be follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up. The training itself is just sort of whetting your appetite. It's the habits that you build by following up and having exercise that really make the difference.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Jay.
Is there any changes that you would make in the order of how you develop this?
Great question. I think I'd be more proactive knowing what A, B, C, and D are. In other words, have B ready when A is done. I would always, mission, vision, values, purpose is absolutely the first thing to do. Because if you don't know who you are, how do you ever expect to attract the right people? So on the others, I'd probably start the lean leadership training and the internal development stuff a little earlier, because it's sort of, if you think about it, putting the right leaders in place then helps us attract the right people, as opposed to the people, we didn't realize that we were losing people because we had inconsistent leadership until it sort of became the obvious issue. So I would do the leadership thing, the heartbeat leadership thing earlier after the mission, vision, values, purpose.
That's a good point, because otherwise you have train them, don't train me.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we weren't, as I said, we weren't the brightest bulbs.
Great job, really.
Lot brighter than a lot of other company stuff.
Well, we were good at recognizing, you know, we knew we were good at recognizing that we were going to have failures, and we were really good at recognizing that was okay, just as long as you quickly learned and adjusted from them, and we had lots of conversations. So you never felt like you were on your own on the management team. It was always, hey, let's go, I'm having a problem, let's go try and figure this out together. And we would have, as I say, animated and heated discussions about the minutia of what a heartbeat leader is and what observable habits there are for engaged people versus disengaged and things like that. So there's a lot of depth to it.
Did the size of your company have a lot to do with the success of this program, that the leadership team wasn't concerned about the stakeholder or shareholders or upper management?
Great question. I would say that not the size, more the fact that our ownership was 100% behind it. So they were, you know, it's the old difference between committed and involved. The pig is committed, the chicken's involved in breakfast. Chicken lays the egg, the pig is the bacon, so he's committed. Our leadership was committed. So they understood how critically important it was for us to do the mission, vision, values and get that sorted out, and to, you know, hire and fire and things like that based upon them. So I think that was really a really important part. The size of the company, I don't think it matters. The larger the company you are, the more resources you have. As long as the senior leadership is committed to the process, the ownership's committed to the process, then you can build a strong foundation.
Right. And you spoke a lot about operations.
Sure.
Did this carry on into other areas, the sales force, the
Yes.
administrative offices?
Yeah, great question. Our sales, our internal customer service team had 5th metric scorecards as well. The head of customer service was looking to engage her team just as much. We didn't see it as lean manufacturing, we saw it as lean enterprise. So we did as much work on our order entry process and our quoting process as we did on our shipping process and our returns process, or whatever process is on the floor. Was it fully, you know, at the same level? No, we had more people on the floor and they were more excited about it. Sometimes, you know, it was harder to get some folks engaged, but it didn't stop us from reaching out and putting the onus on a leadership level that we were going to be deeply committed. We did a lot of design for manufacturability with our engineering team. We did it in our closing processes for the accounting team and so on.
Great, thank you.
Well, Paul, there's so much more to talk about, and I really commend you in putting it together in such a concise 1 hour package. It's obviously too much to cover in that, but you really pruned it back in a meaningful way. So we appreciate the time that it took to do that and bring it down to a package that we could consume in the hour. But we are on the hour, so well, I'm always respectful of your times. But I'm very grateful, Paul, for your pulling this together today. I learned a lot, and I can think of a lot of other people that could learn a lot from it. So it's been a very good session. So why don't we leave it there? And again, great conversation as always here Thursday afternoon at 3.